Hello and welcome to another Daily Muppet. Today's video I want to talk about the latest news that has come out that the Glazers are potentially looking to a quick sale that could be done even by the spring. This is something I've touched on in previous videos, how this affects likely buyers. I want to talk about some information, some things that are out there about departures, contracts, as well as the goalkeeper situation, a right back situation, and striker situation, among other things. So first, let's get right into the talk about the quick sale. One of the things I've been mentioning for a while that I've been hearing from my end is that I mentioned this, I think, in the first video that I talked about the sale, which is that I expect it's going to go to an American investor or somebody who's already very much where the money, the funds, all of that is already in the EU or US. And essentially, or UK, but the reason for that is quite simple. The Glazers wanted a quick sale. Something more complex, something from the Middle East, something from a state-backed fund is more complex. It is going to take more time to review. There's a few things that it has to go through for a sale to get approved. It has to go through, of course, there's the general review of things and money coming into the country when it comes to a government of UK. There's the fitness and all of that test and things like that you have to see as well to pass, which they likely would, considering the owners of Newcastle and things like that. But there's a big, huge other red flag or a big, huge other barrier or problem with selling Manchester United. It's a publicly traded company on the New York Stock Exchange. Everything that the Glazers do from a major standpoint has to be covered by and reported to the Security and Exchanges Commission in the US, has to be reviewed by them, has to be checked out by them. And so basically what you're talking about here is if there's money coming in from a state-backed thing in the Middle East, it's not the same. It takes more time. There are things that have to be looked at when it comes to the stock exchange, SEC, and things like that. And basically just what I have heard in general, as I've said before, this is just what I've heard in general, is that it's easier for them to sell it to an American investor or somebody where the money, their funds, the review, the business is already there. It's already something perhaps Rain Group has even looked at who are handling the sale. So the article came out from Simon Stone, which said that they would be looking to, if the club is sold, if the sale goes through, that it could and should be done by this spring. This doesn't necessarily mean there's a buyer already ready and all set up, but there are. What it means is that it's very likely in their communications, this again has been going on for months prior to them making it very public, that in their communications with interested parties as well as the Rain Group and who they've already maybe had contact with, reviewed, part of the Chelsea interest, people they've already got information on, they believe there are viable buyers where it would not be held up, where there would be no hiccups in the process, where the money is there, where they would get approved, where there'd be no issues with the US side of it, with the UK side of it, with the ownership fitness test and all of that, that all of that would go smoothly, and that's why it would be quick. They do want a quick sale. With the fact that they're looking to sell the club, they do want things to be done rapidly. And again, a big part of that is because they were forced into the situation by realizing that the money is no longer there. The club has dried up for the Glazers. They paid their dividends off of an equity line. Debt is full. They cannot continue. They cannot get investment that they want. So they've been forced into this situation, and given that, the quicker they can get out of it and get the money that they need, the better. But if they do sell, and it does look to be a quick sell, the reason for it would be that they have people who are lined up, likely buyers, who they believe, and that due diligence is already performed, have money, have the ability to buy the club, and would not provide complications on the American or the UK side of things. And so it's very likely, from what I've heard since the beginning and understood on this, that it is going to be someone from the US, the most likely candidate. And again, as I've said in the last video, this is much more complex to report on. A lot of the things I heard, we're in August and now, or September, and now they're finally things coming out in the last 2 weeks. So it's been a tricky road on this in terms of reporting what's actually happening, where it goes, and obviously it could change. We're talking about multi-billion-dollar purchase. That being said, I think some people have gotten the idea that it has to take a year to get something like this done. It doesn't. Purchase of businesses of this size, takeovers, can be done very fast if all the diligence is there, and it's uncomplicated by the fact that the Glazers own, as a family, pretty much the entire controlling stake, so it's not really difficult for them to make the sale of that, and to do that, since they're all on the same page. It's not a bunch of different parties and owners and things like that can make it much more complicated. Elon Musk bought Twitter for 10 times as much as United is going to sell, and while it was dragged out, once the decision was made, it happened extremely fast. If the money is there and they feel that the money is there from an interested party, a party that has the money, the party that has the funds, the party that has it there, a party that has things already verified in a sense that can be seen by the UK governments, the US governments, SECs, the Exchange Commission, everybody involved, then it can be very fast. And that's why I believe it's going to be one of those. And I think by the end of the year, we're going to start hearing more of the specifics on the names there. And I've talked about a few of them that I have heard and mentioned before, but we'll get into that moving forward as it happens. But they are looking to a quick club sale, and I do believe it'll happen. Like, as I mentioned, there are parties involved who have the money, who can afford it, who aren't so worried about the cost. They're going to pay what needs to be and would be able to commit to what they need and what the club needs, and in that way it should be smooth sailing. Should they move forward with it, should they present a formal offer to buy the club, it should move forward. So there are parties like that involved that aren't state-backed funds, and I think it's going to go to one of those. Moving on into the transfer side of things, in terms of departures, I wanted to touch on this. Obviously, Ronaldo's departed from the club. When you look at who's left, you have fringe players who are likely to leave, but as discussed, and there's been some news about this, I think, out there, that there's going to be a departure likely in the centre-back area. It's quite possible. I believe Donny van de Beek will go. I believe he's been run out and tested on what he can do, and it's clear that Erik ten Hag is going to want to upgrade the midfield, and he's going to have to make a departure for that to occur, and or two. And I think Donny van de Beek will be one of the ones that goes there. In the forward line, I don't know that anyone else is going to depart, but it's obviously going to be a 6-month run for Sancho to see. And if he does not get into form, it is not impossible for him to leave as well. So those would be the areas I'd expect departures, potentially at center back. In the midfield, 1 or 2 departures, Van de Beek, Fred potentially, if they decide, and they don't reach an agreement on the idea of a lower wage extended contract, then I think Fred will depart as well with a more limited role. I think he would depart as well. So there's a lot of potential there to leave. Martial, if he cannot be healthy. Sancho, if he cannot get into form. These are the 2 other areas I would see departures. And so in terms of shoring things out, and in terms of shoring things up in the club, in terms of who they want to keep, before moving on to signings, there's news there again that they're planning to extend Marcus Rashford's contract and then the year option, and then give him a new contract. And again, as the 2 people that they're certain of giving new deals to are Diogo Dalot and Marcus Rashford, but they're going to occur in the new year. This is also complicated a little bit by the whole situation with new ownership, because you're talking about, for someone like Marcus Rashford, that could be a 60 million contract over the lifetime of it. 40 million or so for Dalot. That's 100 million potentially in the future books. It would be a lot better if the sale's done by spring, because now when I look at it, they could just simply trigger both of their extra years. Dalot may be already in his extra year, but trigger the extra year. I can't remember off the top of my head, but trigger the extra year and then let the new ownership make the new decisions on the contracts and things like that, because I don't know how in-depth they can get into those things. But when you look at the signings needed in January, things like that we'll talk about, if you think about it overall, extending Rashford, extending Dalot, maybe extending even some other players, making signings, you could be adding 150, 200 million to the long-term debt of the club. So in the midst of a sale, so it's complicated. It's complicated by all of this. And I would not be surprised to see at this point no contracts handed out until the sale is complete or in the very, very latter stages of it. And that's okay too. If we wait till March, especially if the players are understanding, look, new ownership's coming in, they're going to invest, we're going to be getting a lot, and the club is going to be coming back to the top. I think it makes it a very desirable situation to be in for a lot of the players. Given that it's not something where they'd be super happy and everybody's great with the old ownership. So I think that's just an interesting thing, an interesting dynamic we're going to have to watch over the next few months when it comes to contracts. Moving on to signings, one of the things they've still been told is that Diogo Costa is the top target. And I mention this because, top target for goalkeeper, I mention this because there was an article about, I think Chelsea or Liverpool or someone, no, not Liverpool, but Chelsea looking at them. And it is true. There are multiple clubs that have been looking at Diogo Costa. He remains the first choice goalkeeper for Manchester United if they decide to move on as expected, with replacing De Gea as first choice and letting Dean Henderson go. He is the first choice there. In terms of right back, the main name that's been mentioned out there is Frimpong. But if we talk about January, again, when we take this complication of the sale, I don't see how you're getting a striker and a right back in and spending all this kind of money at the moment. So I still believe strongly here that is a decision that's going to be delayed till summer, that there's a potential for Ethan Laird to be recalled, that perhaps Laird will be evaluated by Ten Hag before that decision is made. And it's starting to me to feel like the midfield is an area that's going to be addressed next year. And that. So I personally don't expect with the wholesale situation a right back purchase. I'm not sure if there's any purchase going to be made in January, but if so, it'll be in the forward position, and Cody Gakpo remains the top target. I don't know if it's going to happen. I really don't. I just keep asking and talking to people, and it's a very complex situation where I'm told that in the football side of things with Ten Hag, he's pressing very, very hard for them to make the offer for Cody Gakpo. They know what it would cost. Wages wouldn't be an issue. They're very interested, but there's people involved who think the Glazers will not sanction the money for it during the middle of this sale. That they're concerned they're going to want to ask Gakpo, wait until summer to make a move. But at the same time, PSV are trying to get him out. Actually, they need the money. And so no matter what kind of all of this you're hearing, it's a complicated situation where PSV need to sell. United want him. Ten Hag wants him now. Will it happen or won't it happen in January is very, very complicated by the whole Glazers sale situation. And there could be a situation where they don't do it and they ask him to wait until summer. And yeah, it's going to leave United short in that case. Really necessary to get Martial fit, Sancho up and firing to make it through the last 6 months of the season. Again, I hope the sale progresses as quickly as it should, because then you could have a situation where it behooves the new buyers to say, hey, let's get Rashford locked down, let's get Dalot locked down, let's get this Gakpo guy in now so we have a good rest of the 6 months of the year, and we're in a good place with Champions League qualified in summer to really press on next season and go for it. That's my hope and expectation. So a lot of complications, a lot of things up in the air, but things are moving forward. There are parties that the Rain Group has already spoken with and familiar with that have made contact, and so that may be part of what is speeding up the potential sale or making it possible for the sale to happen quickly. Again, it's all complicated. It's all complicated, and I'll say whatever I can on this, but it's not like a transfer. And things don't change in a moment with a sale like this, to be fair, but is much more under wraps because you're talking about way broader, bigger things now than a player transfer, things that affect stock markets, things that affect the, that have to do with the exchange commissions, things that have to do with regulatory and legal bodies. So it becomes a much more tricky scene, the whole thing. But I'll keep passing along the info that I can, and it's very, very good news that the BBC is hearing and Simon Stone is hearing that it's expected to be a quick sale should it go through. And they're not going to say on that note of should, it's because it can't. I've said this too, it's not a guarantee anything in this, they can't say 100% that it's going to be sold. That's not the type of public statement that the Glazers can make in something like this until they're sure of it, because you're talking again about stocks, about shares, about all of that. So I wouldn't worry about that kind of language at the moment. That's just necessary language. Until things are certain, they cannot be making extremely bold claims or anything like that. So that's what we've got for today. Enjoy. Thank you for watching this video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on, and I'll speak to you again soon.